Welcome back. Panel is here. Time for me to be quiet. Washington Post columnist, NBC News analyst Eugene Robinson, Amy Walter, national editor of the Cook Political Report, Yamchie Alcindor, White House correspondent for the PBS NewsHour, and Hugh Hewitt, host on the Salem Radio Network. Amy Walter. All right. Do you feel like you know more or less about the safety of Robert Mueller's job?
I feel as confused as I think most Americans do right now. I think it feels a little bit like, you know, when you're in the supermarket and there's Muzak in the background. It's there. It's a constant noise, but you can't quite make out the song exactly. But I just want to go back to something else, too, sort of do a 30,000-foot view about where we are and how we got here. That none of this, what we're talking about right now, would have been possible but for two things. One, the gradual disillusion of faith and trust in institutions that's been happening over the last 10, 15 years. Some of it by their own behavior,
right,
whether it was the Catholic Church covering up sex abuse scandals, sports covering up doping, obviously 9/11 and the weapons of mass destruction. Some of it is that the people, as part of the institutions, even politicians, things are rigged, things are corrupt, right? People start to believe that. And then, so Donald Trump didn't invent this. This has been part of it. And then the tribalism, that we only will trust what comes out of the mouths and the opinions of people that we already identify with. So this is the culture that we live in. Donald Trump didn't invent it. He's certainly helping to stoke it, and not heal it. Right. But we are here at this point, and it didn't come it's not accidental how we got here.
Yamiche, what has mattered more with this memo? What was in it for the president or the buildup?
Hashtag release the memo was way more important than the actual memo. When I was reading that memo, I thought, okay, what was the big news here? What exactly am I reading? But then when I read the cover page, it was all about public interest. It was all about this idea that they were trying to explain to the public that they needed to know this, that this was in their best interest, when in reality it was in the best interest of the president. The president saw this memo as kind of murkying the waters, and his tweets saying that this vindicates him. When anybody who reads that memo realizes that that's not what's happening, tells me that this memo was all about just getting the base to start talking about it. I've been talking to family members in Miami who never really talk about politics. They're like, what is this memo? I don't understand what's going on. What did the FBI do? That, to me, is the power of this memo. It's that you have people now questioning the institutions without really understanding what everything is about.
Hugh?
The memo proves, I reviewed hundreds and hundreds of FISA applications for 2 attorneys general. I did that job for 2 years. That the omission of a material fact is a big deal. And that
we don't know there's an omission of that material fact, though, Hugh. We actually don't know that it's true.
I believe it is fairly, I will rely on the fact they did not say DNC, HRC. They said political. And so I'm going on that
opponent.
Political opponent. If I'm reviewing that and I tell the Attorney General, by the way, this came from the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign, and that's not the memo. We go back to the FBI. There was no Division of National Security at that time, and we send it back and put it in. If you were a corporate executive in America and you did a quarterly earnings report that showed income from a source, and you did not describe that source as sketchy, shady, or some way compromised, you will go to jail. And people ought to think about a FISA warrant as a quarterly report and hold it to the same standard. All that said, you and I talked on the radio. They oversold it. They ought not. They should have put it out there without saying anything about it, and they have hurt themselves as a result. Rod Rosenstein is not going to get fired. Yeah. The special counsel is not going to get fired, but this memo does hurt the FBI with the FISA courts.
Okay.
No, I think it's fascinating that the co-author of the memo and the man who saw the underlying intelligence, Congressman Trey Gowdy, has been saying this does nothing to undermine his faith in the Mueller investigation, and that of course there would be a Mueller investigation, a Russia investigation, without the dossier, even without Carter Page, I mean, without the whole thing. So it is, this is, we have seen the blowing of a lot of smoke this week. The smoke will dissipate. I mean, Mueller's going to continue with his investigation.
Bob Mueller rarely has spoken. And
yes.
Okay, when I say the probe has not spoken, but when it has, Amy, it's gotten, two lying to the FBI, 2 flips, and Michael Flynn and Papadopoulos, a major indictment against Manafort. Looks like Rick Gates may be in the form of, he's just doing his job.
Well, and
stuff's
because he has a lower profile, the attacks aren't on him personally. So when he goes to deliver the news, it's a lot different than when, say, Ken Starr went to deliver the news, because Democrats had effectively undercut him and undercut his credibility and made it about Ken Starr personally.
Well, isn't that where it's coming? Isn't that what this is?
But this now, right, this is undercutting the underlying evidence that's going to Robert Mueller. But he, as a messenger, is more credible than, say, somebody coming out of another institution.
I mean, if you listen to the Trump supporters, though, and people who are really in his camp, they're going after Mueller. They're saying his name. It's Republicans going after Republicans, and Republicans going after institutions that usually were conservative. So you have this weird situation where I thought it was really important that John Brennan was saying that, yes, I had issues with Democrats, but they never did what this administration is doing and these people are doing, which is really adding
I have to
a level
disagree.
of partisan.
I talked to all the Republicans, McConnell, Ryan. No one is calling for Mueller to be fired. No one is calling for Rosenstein to be fired. Maybe he might have to recuse on an obstruction case because he authored the memo about Comey. I don't know of a single Republican of stature in the party who wants Mueller fired.
But Yamish's point, though, it is fascinating that you see people on the left of the Democratic Party saying, "How dare anyone attack the FBI?" And you see
I'm old enough to remember, right?
And people on the right of the Republican Party, of virtually the entire Republican Party, saying, "You know, the FBI violating our civil liberties."
By the way, let me put up the quick poll number here, Gene, to support your point here. Among Republicans, Republican favorability of the FBI in negative territory.
It's just astounding.
And it's gone up among Democrats.
Yeah.
It's astounding to me.
And Sarah Sanders said from the podium, of course he's not going to call for Mueller's firing. We could imagine what all of you in the press would do. So Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell know if they said he really should fire Rob Mueller, that would be a crisis. People would go after them. So they're being smarter about it than just saying that.
By the way, I want to button up something from Reince Priebus. He kept saying, "I felt."
Yeah.
It was an interesting choice of words.
Look, when
Keeps
you
him
feel
out
you
of.
cannot be perjured. You can't perjure yourself if you feel something. If you don't remember something, you can't perjure yourself. So he's been lawyered up. He's obviously feeling like he's not a target and he's in the clear.
But you felt when you heard the words "felt" that was legal advice?
That's legal advice. Yes.
Very interesting. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.